I want you to picture a scenario. It's a Tuesday afternoon. You walk into a room and you feel completely fine.
Right, just a totally normal day.
Exactly. You're actually having a great day.
Yeah.
Your energy is stable. Your mind is clear. You got decent sleep the night before. And then you spend 10 minutes, just 10 fleeting minutes with a specific coworker or maybe a family member or your partner.
And nothing overtly bad happens.
Right. You haven't even had an argument. There was no raised voice, no slammed doors, no obvious, observable conflict at all.
But the internal shift is massive.
Yeah, it's undeniable.
Yeah.
You leave that room, and suddenly there's a physical knot right at the base of your stomach. Your shoulders are practically touching your ears. Your breathing has become incredibly shallow.
And there's this lingering, heavy sense of exhaustion that just settles over your entire body for the rest of the day.
Yes, exactly that. So what actually just happened to you? If you try to explain it to someone else, you sound crazy.
Because on the surface, you just talked about the weather.
Right. Or you just went over a spreadsheet. You think you just had a normal conversation. But underneath the surface of those spoken words, your nervous system was completely hijacked.
It is a profound, invisible exchange. And what is truly staggering is that it is happening all the time.
Every single day.
Yeah. We walk around believing we are these closed systems, you know, autonomous individuals operating completely independently. But the reality is we are constantly trading emotional and physiological data with the people around us.
And that invisible trade is what we are uncovering today in this deep dive. Because when you feel that sudden exhaustion, when you feel drained by a specific person, it's not just in your head.
No, it's in your biology.
Right. So if we are going to understand this, we have to undergo a massive paradigm shift right out of the gate.
We really do. We have to stop looking at our difficult, draining relationships purely through the lens of compatibility. We have to stop blaming it on communication styles or personality clashes or saying things like, we just rub each other the wrong way.
Because that's just the surface level.
Exactly. Instead, we have to look at neurobiology. We are examining the invisible, millisecond by millisecond autonomic entrainment that occurs entirely beneath your conscious awareness.
This isn't just about how you interact conversationally, is it?
Not at all. This is about how your nervous system dictates your emotional survival.
Okay, let me make sure I'm grasping the scale of this. You're saying that beneath every word I speak, my body is literally syncing up with or fighting against the body of the person standing in front of me.
Exactly. Think of it like two Wi-Fi routers in the same room.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, you don't see the signals crossing, but they are constantly pinging each other, negotiating connections, interpreting data. Your nervous system is an open network.
But not everyone's network is the same, right?
Right. For some people, that network is highly secured. But for others, and this is who we are really speaking to today, that network has no password. They are absorbing the bandwidth of everyone in the room.
Which brings us perfectly to our first question. If our nervous systems are essentially open Wi-Fi networks, why are some of us so much more porous than others?
That's the core mystery.
To understand why certain people completely drain you, we first have to understand the biological mechanism that even allows them in. I want to talk about the role of the therapist friend.
Oh, yes. The classic archetype.
If you're listening to this, you likely know exactly who this is, or there's a very high probability that you are this person.
It's incredibly common among highly empathetic people.
The therapist friend is the one everyone instinctively calls in a crisis. They are the ones who lie awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, replaying someone else's trauma, trying to solve a problem that isn't theirs.
They know the intimate, granular details of everyone's inner world in their friend group.
But here's the massive catch. No one really knows theirs.
Right. When you observe the therapist friend on the surface, what you see looks like extreme thoughtfulness. Society really rewards this behavior.
We call them a saint or a wonderful listener.
A deeply empathetic person, yeah. But if we peel back that behavioral layer and look at the psychological and physiological levels, we are looking at something far more mechanical.
Mechanical how?
We are looking at the aggressive action of mirror neurons and the amygdala.
I want to slow down on that because empathy is so often romanticized as this purely spiritual or moral quality. But you're saying empathy is a biological event.
It is a deeply physiological event. Let's go inside the brain for a moment. Deep in your cortex, you have specialized cells called mirror neurons.
I've heard of these. They were discovered in monkeys, right?
Yes, originally in macaque monkeys. Researchers noticed that when a monkey picked up a peanut, certain motor neurons fired.
Makes sense. It's moving its arm.
But fascinatingly, when that monkey simply watched a human researcher pick up a peanut, those exact same motor neurons fired again. The brain was running a simulation.
So the brain doesn't just see the action, it practically acts it out internally.
Precisely. And in humans, this applies to emotions. If you see a friend wince in physical pain, your mirror neurons light up in the exact areas associated with your own physical pain.
Wow, so I'm literally feeling their pain on a cellular level.
You internally simulate what another person is feeling. This is the biological foundation of empathy. But the timing is what makes this overwhelming for the therapist friend.
Because it happens too fast to control.
Exactly. The amygdala, which is your brain's primal threat detection center, your emotional alarm system, it processes human facial expressions in under 200 milliseconds.
200 milliseconds.
Oh,
That is,
yeah.
wait, a blink is what, maybe a third of a second?
A blink is about 300 to 400 milliseconds, so significantly faster than the blink of an eye.
Before I can even physically blink, my brain has already processed the microexpression on my coworker's face.
Yes. Before you can form a conscious thought, before your prefrontal cortex can come online and say, oh, Susan looks a bit stressed today, your amygdala has already fired.
It's already sounded the alarm.
It has already initiated a full-body simulation of Susan's emotional state. Your nervous system is reacting as if her experience is your experience before you have even had a chance to consent to it.
And that simulation isn't just happening in my head, right? Because when I feel that knot in my stomach we talked about earlier, that's physical. Where does the physical sensation come from?
That brings us to a remarkable structure called the insula. The insula sits deep inside the brain, and you can think of it as the translator between your physical body and your emotional awareness.
Okay, so how does it work with the amygdala?
When your amygdala detects Susan's stress, it sends signals to your body. Your heart rate might subtly increase, your breathing becomes a bit shallower, your muscles tense.
Basically a mini fight-or-flight response.
Exactly. The insula takes those physical signals and translates them into an emotional reality. It tells your conscious mind, we are experiencing anxiety right now.
Wait, it tells my brain that we are experiencing anxiety,
Mm.
not that Susan is.
Exactly. Because at that primal autonomic level, the boundary between you and Susan has temporarily dissolved.
It is wild.
Your insula is reading your own tense muscles and elevated heart rate and assuming the threat is happening to you.
But let me play devil's advocate here, or at least speak for the deeply empathetic listeners right now. Because if I'm listening to this, my defense mechanism is flaring up.
Of course it is.
Isn't being hyper-aware of others, feeling what they feel, just what it means to be a good person? If someone I love is hurting, shouldn't I hurt too? I don't want to be a sociopath who just watches someone cry and feels nothing.
That is the existential friction we have to resolve right here. Because society conflates two completely different processes. We must draw a hard line between empathic concern and emotional contagion.
Okay, break those down for me. What is empathic concern?
Empathic concern is a conscious, regulated awareness of another person's distress. It involves your prefrontal cortex, the logical reasoning part of your brain.
So it's more deliberate.
With empathic concern, your mirror neurons might fire. You recognize they are in pain, but you maintain a rigid psychological boundary. You are able to say internally, I see that you are suffering. I care about you. But your suffering is yours, and I am safe.
I love that. It's like you are standing beside them in the pouring rain, holding an umbrella over them, but you recognize that you are not the storm.
That's a beautiful metaphor.
You aren't forcing yourself to get struck by the lightning just to prove you care.
That's a great way to phrase it. Emotional contagion, on the other hand, is what happens when you drop the umbrella and insist on getting struck by lightning.
Oof, that hits hard.
Emotional contagion is an automatic bottom-up mirroring where the psychological boundary between self and other completely collapses. You aren't just understanding their distress, your body is actively generating its own version of it.
You are quite literally catching their emotion the same way you would catch a virus.
Yes. And what happens if someone lives their entire life operating on emotional contagion? Because I know people who do this. They literally cannot separate their mood from the mood of their spouse or their kids.
If you operate entirely on emotional contagion, you are highly susceptible to a clinical condition called compassion fatigue.
Compassion fatigue. Now, just hearing the phrase, it sounds like you just care too much and so you need a nap.
Right, it sounds like a badge of honor almost.
But you're telling me it's much more structural than just needing a weekend off.
It is a profound cellular depletion.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just being tired. Compassion fatigue results from sustained empathic engagement with the suffering of others without adequate reciprocity.
So it's a one-way street of energy.
Think of empathy as a biological resource. When you engage in emotional contagion, your nervous system is burning massive amounts of energy to simulate and process someone else's trauma.
And if they don't give anything back.
If that person does not offer you equivalent emotional regulation in return, if they just dump their stress and walk away, your tank remains empty.
Over time, your nervous system essentially starts to shut down the empathy circuits to protect you from total depletion.
So you just go numb.
That sensitivity dulls. The therapist friend wakes up one day and realizes they feel nothing but irritability, emotional exhaustion, and a deep, cynical sense of disconnection from everyone they used to care about.
That is terrifying. It's not that you care too much, it's that your biological hardware has literally burned out from overuse.
It's a survival mechanism kicking in too late.
But this is where it gets incredibly layered and, honestly, a little haunting. If you are that person, if you are the therapist friend, constantly absorbing the room, constantly hyper-vigilant to the micro-expressions of your boss, your partner, your kids, I want you to really hear this next part.
It's crucial.
This isn't just a personality quirk. You didn't just decide to be this way because you read a book on being nice.
No, not at all.
This permeability, this porousness to the emotions of others was likely programmed into you long before you ever had a choice in the matter.
If we are going to understand why the boundary dissolves so easily for some people, we have to transition from the brain in the present moment to the developmental blueprint of the past.
Right, the origin story.
If our nervous systems are designed to sync with others, why are some of us so much more porous? Why do some people absorb the emotional climate of the entire office, carrying the weight of a tense meeting for 3 days, while their colleague walks through the exact same environment, shrugs it off, and goes to lunch?
Let's paint the picture of what this porousness looks like on the surface level in everyday life. We are talking about chronic people-pleasing.
Yes, the constant need to appease.
We are talking about an absolute paralyzing inability to say the word no without being consumed by intense, disproportionate guilt.
We see extreme conflict avoidance, the kind where someone will twist themselves into a pretzel, compromise their own values, and spend thousands of dollars they don't have just to keep the peace.
And it's not just behavioral, is it? It's somatic. Right. If you ask this person to set a boundary, to just tell their mother they can't come over for dinner this Sunday, they feel a visceral, stomach-dropping dread. Their heart races. They feel like they are about to jump out of an airplane.
So what is actually happening in the unconscious process here? Why does a simple no trigger a survival-level panic?
To unravel this, we have to look deeply at childhood emotional neglect, which clinicians refer to as CEN, and family enmeshment.
When you grow up in an unpredictable, volatile, or emotionally unavailable environment, your nervous system is forced to adapt.
Because survival is the only goal.
Exactly. A child's primary biological imperative is to maintain connection with their caregivers, because without that connection, a child literally cannot survive.
Right, they can't feed themselves or protect themselves.
So if the environment is dangerous, and dangerous doesn't just mean physical abuse, it can mean emotional volatility. The child's nervous system develops a highly specialized survival adaptation.
We often talk about the fight, flight, or freeze responses. But there is a fourth response that explains the therapist friend perfectly.
The fawn response.
Yes, the fawn response. Fawning is an unconscious strategy where a child uses extreme people-pleasing, pacification, and codependent overfunctioning to manage the emotions of their caregivers.
Let's ground this in a real example so people can feel what this looks like. Imagine a 7-year-old girl.
Okay, a 7-year-old girl.
Imagine a 7-year-old girl whose mother is prone to deep, unpredictable, depressive episodes. Sometimes the mother is warm and present, but other times she retreats to her room for days, completely shut down, sighing, weeping silently.
Or, conversely, a child whose father is prone to explosive rage over minor inconveniences.
In either scenario, the environment is unstable.
Highly unstable. And in some cases, it's enmeshment. This is when the parent actually relies on the child to be their emotional confidant. The mother cries to the 7-year-old about how terrible the father is.
Which is way too much for a child's nervous system to handle.
Exactly. In all of these scenarios, the child learns a devastatingly effective lesson very quickly. My physical and emotional safety depends entirely on my ability to predict, manage, and soothe the emotional state of the giant adults in this house.
The child essentially becomes a tiny emotional radar system.
Yes, they learn to constantly scan the room for microscopic threats. Is Dad walking a little too heavily today? Does Mom's sigh mean she's sad or angry? If I am perfectly quiet, perfectly good, and anticipate exactly what they need before they even ask, maybe we will be safe today.
But here is the tragic psychological trade-off that I want to explore. If this child is spending 100% of her biological energy scanning her parents' internal state, what happens to her own?
It gets completely disrupted, suppressed, and eventually severed.
We see this in neuropsychology as a disruption in right brain development.
The right hemisphere, yeah.
The right hemisphere is heavily involved in processing emotional and somatic states. When a child's own emotions are consistently ignored, dismissed, or shamed, when they are told, "Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about," or simply when there is no room for their sadness because the parent's sadness takes up all the oxygen in the room, the child internalizes a core belief.
The belief that their feelings are a burden.
Yes. They learn that having needs is dangerous, so they learn to dissociate from their internal states.
Because feeling them would just cause more pain.
Exactly. Over time, this often manifests as a condition called alexithymia.
Let's define that, because that is a powerful word. Alexithymia.
Alexithymia is literally translated from Greek as no words for emotions. It is the inability to identify, describe, or even feel your own internal emotional states.
So they literally don't know what they're feeling.
Right. If you ask an adult with high alexithymia, how are you feeling right now? They might look at you blankly, or they might describe a physical sensation. My chest is tight. But they cannot connect it to the emotion of anxiety or sadness.
Because they literally had to sever the wire to their own dashboard to survive childhood.
Precisely. In a healthy human, your feelings are biological signals designed to guide your behavior. Anger tells you a boundary has been crossed. Sadness tells you to seek comfort. Fear tells you to retreat.
But if you are a fawn type, you can't use your own feelings to guide you because you've turned them off.
So what do? You turn your nervous system entirely outward. You turn yourself into a human antenna, tuning strictly to the frequencies of other people's emotions to gauge whether or not you are safe.
This makes so much sense, and it is so heartbreaking. Let me try an analogy here to summarize what you're saying.
Go for it.
It's like you are living in a house, but your security alarm system is wired to your neighbor's house instead of your own. You are constantly panicking because you hear alarms going off, you're rushing to fix their broken windows, you're putting out their kitchen fires.
Meanwhile, your own house could be actively burning down.
Exactly. You have absolutely no idea if your own front door is wide open or if your own house is burning down because you don't have sensors in your own living room.
That is one of the most accurate analogies for codependency and fawning you could possibly use. You're fiercely protective of the neighbor's house while your own is crumbling.
And this brings us to the existential level of the therapist friend persona. The profound tragedy here is that this chronic, exhausting hypervigilance is masquerading as thoughtfulness.
You think you were just a deeply caring, selfless person? Society tells you that you are a martyr for love.
But the hidden, unconscious fear sustaining this behavior is the terrifying belief that if you express your own needs or if you dare to set a boundary, you will be abandoned.
In childhood, your entire sense of self-worth became fused with your utility. You only have value if you are caretaking, soothing, or fixing someone else.
So if I am not useful, I am not lovable.
That is the core wound. If you aren't fixing someone, you fear you have no reason to exist in their life.
And this specific wiring, this antenna, completely focused outward, terrified of abandonment, sets you up for a massive collision in adulthood.
The ultimate collision.
Because what happens when a nervous system that is wired to serve others, a nervous system that equates space with abandonment, collides with a nervous system that is wired to run away from connection?
You get the anxious avoidant trap.
And we were now moving from the isolated individual nervous system into the chaotic chemistry of romantic dynamics.
The anxious avoidant trap is, without exaggeration, one of the most addictive, agonizing, and common loops in human psychology.
Relationship researchers often call this the protest polka, right?
Yes, Dr. Sue Johnson coined that term. And on the surface, the behavioral choreography of this dance is unmistakable. We have all seen this, or we have lived it. It is the classic push-pull dynamic.
Let's set the scene of the protest polka because it is visceral.
Paint the picture.
The anxious partner is the pursuer. They feel distance and they panic. They are sending the double text. They're reaching out. They want to talk about the relationship right now. They are protesting the distance.
And what's the avoidant partner doing?
On the other side, the avoidant partner withdraws. The more the anxious partner reaches, the more the avoidant partner shuts down. They demand space. They become logically cold.
They deflect emotional conversations, often saying things like, why do we always have to talk about feelings? Can't we just have peace?
Yes. And what is so painful is that so much of this agonizing dance happens in total silence, staring at smartphones.
The modern arena for this trauma is the text message thread.
Exactly. The anxious partner is staring at the screen. They see the three little typing dots appear and then disappear. The silence stretches for hours.
And in that silence, their brain is going wild.
In that silence, the anxious partner is obsessing, spinning massive narratives about what the avoidant partner is thinking, convincing themselves it's over.
Meanwhile, the avoidant partner is sitting in their apartment, completely overwhelmed, spending all of their cognitive energy trying not to think about the relationship at all, viewing the unanswered text as a heavy, suffocating demand.
To deconstruct why this happens, we have to look beneath the behavior at the psychological attachment mechanisms of both individuals.
They are both operating out of deep childhood conditioning. Let's start with the anxious attachment style. Because of early inconsistent caregiving, maybe a parent who is sometimes overly affectionate and other times completely absent, their nervous system is permanently tuned to the frequency of relationship threat.
The human antenna we talked about earlier.
Yes, but specifically tuned for abandonment. When they sense even a millimeter of emotional distance, their attachment system hyperactivates. It goes into overdrive. They use what we call protest behaviors.
Calling repeatedly, picking fights, threatening to leave even when they don't want to.
Precisely. But here's the critical reframe. They do not do this because they enjoy conflict. They do this because they're desperately trying to force a connection.
So a fight is better than silence.
To the anxious brain, negative attention is infinitely better than no attention. A fight means the partner is engaged. Silence means death. They are protesting the disconnection.
Okay, now let's look at the other side of the room. The avoidant attachment style. Why are they running?
Avoidant attachment is often rooted in dismissive caregiving during childhood. Imagine a child who cried and was told to toughen up. A child who was praised only for independence and whose emotional needs were treated as a nuisance.
Wow, so they just learned to shut it down early on.
This child learned a deeply painful lesson. Depending on others is dangerous, disappointing, or pointless. I can only rely on myself.
So they associate needs with rejection.
So in adulthood, when they are under relationship stress, their attachment system doesn't hyperactivate, it deactivates. They use deactivating strategies.
Yep.
They suppress their attachment needs, they focus on their partner's flaws to justify pulling away, and they create emotional distance. Why? Because to the avoidant nervous system, intimacy feels like engulfment. It feels suffocating. It feels like losing their autonomy.
So we have the perfect storm. You have one person whose absolute deepest fear is being abandoned, constantly pursuing a person whose absolute deepest fear is being trapped.
The closer one gets, the more terrified the other becomes.
But this leads us to the multi-million-dollar question. The question that anyone who has ever been stuck in this loop asks themselves every single day.
It's the most confusing part of the whole dynamic.
If this cycle is so incredibly painful, if it just causes constant anxiety, crying spells, frustration, and ruined weekends, why is it so nearly impossible to leave?
People get stuck for years.
Why do people stuck in this trap often describe it to their friends as the most profound, once-in-a-lifetime passion they've ever felt?
What we are about to discuss is perhaps one of the most vital revelations for anyone trapped in this dynamic. It is not passion.
Let me stop you. People are going to hate hearing that.
They will, because it shatters the romantic narrative.
Yeah.
But understanding this is the key to freedom. What you are experiencing is not profound soulmate love. It is a neurochemical addiction to intermittent reinforcement.
Intermittent reinforcement. Okay,
Yeah.
Take us back to Psych 101. What does that mean in the context of neurobiology?
Let's look at the biological loop happening in the brain. When the avoidant partner withdraws, when they go silent for 2 days, the anxious partner's brain registers a massive survival threat.
The amygdala fires?
The amygdala fires. The HPA axis activates. The brain is flooded with stress hormones, primarily cortisol and adrenaline. The anxious partner is in a state of absolute physiological panic. Their chest hurts, they can't eat, they can't sleep.
They're starving for connection.
They are starving. But then eventually the avoidant partner regulates their own anxiety. They feel safe again in the distance, so they briefly return.
They send that one text.
Right. They send a warm text, hey, sorry I was MIA, miss you. Or they come over and offer a fleeting moment of intense physical or emotional closeness.
And what happens in the anxious brain at that exact second?
When that connection is reestablished, the anxious partner's brain registers an end to the life-threatening panic. And in response, it releases a massive, disproportionate flood of dopamine and oxytocin.
Dopamine, the reward neurotransmitter.
Yes. But here is the crucial mechanism of intermittent reinforcement, originally studied by B.F. Skinner. If a rat presses a lever and gets a pellet of food every single time, it only presses the lever when it's hungry. It's predictable.
Right, there's no obsession.
But if the rat presses the lever and gets food randomly, maybe on the 5th press, maybe on the 50th, maybe on the 100th, the rat will become obsessed. It will press the lever until it dies of exhaustion.
Because the unpredictability makes the brain obsess over the reward. It's an emotional slot machine.
Exactly. You keep pulling the lever, text message nothing, call nothing, trying to be perfectly accommodating nothing.
And you are starving, your cortisol is through the roof, and then suddenly, ding, 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 the avoidant partner gives you a crumb of affection, a payout.
And that payout feels incredible, not because it's actually that great, but because of how long you starved for it.
That is exactly it. The brain confuses this intense, jarring chemical relief with profound love and passion.
The relief feels so massive because it is relative to the agonizing anxiety that preceded it. It's like taking off a pair of shoes that are 3 sizes too small. The relief is amazing, but it doesn't mean the shoes are good for you.
Wow, that's a great way to put it.
Because the reward is unpredictable, the anxious brain never habituates to it. It never feels secure. It becomes physically and chemically dependent on the cycle of threat and relief. You become addicted to your partner's breadcrumbs.
Existentially, it's heartbreaking. Because when you strip away the texting games and the fights, you just have 2 deeply terrified children in adult bodies.
Both partners are acting from a place of deep, unacknowledged fear.
And the ultimate tragedy is that the trap actively confirms their worst fears.
It is a self-fulfilling prophecy orchestrated by the nervous system. The anxious partner has an underlying core belief. I am too much and people always leave me.
And every time the avoidant partner pulls away, that fear is confirmed. See, I reached out and they left. I am unlovable.
And the avoidant partner has the core belief. People are demanding and closeness is suffocating. And every time they pull away, the anxious partner panics and pursues them intensely, blowing up their phone.
Confirming the avoidance fear. See, closeness is suffocating. I need to get out of here.
They are perfectly co-escalating each other's trauma. Neither person is getting what they actually need, which is secure love, but both are getting exactly what their unconscious wiring expects.
This cycle will absolutely drain you. It will leave you emotionally bankrupt, feeling crazy, doubting your own sanity.
But as painful as the anxious avoidant trap is, it is usually based on unintentional triggering. They aren't trying to destroy you, they're just trying to survive their own attachment wounds.
But what happens when you encounter someone who doesn't just accidentally trigger your anxiety? What happens when you encounter a nervous system that actively feeds on your emotional reactions in order to survive?
Now we are crossing a very serious boundary. We are moving from the unintentional pain of incompatible attachment into the realm of structural exploitation.
We're moving into cluster B personality disorders.
We are entering the territory of what clinical psychologists often colloquially refer to as emotional vampires.
The predators of permeability. Let's look at the surface level, the observable behavior of an emotional vampire, because it is remarkably distinct from just a difficult partner.
It's a completely different level of exhaustion.
This is the narcissist.
Yeah.
The drama queen. The absolute controller. The constant talker. You know this person because conversations always, inevitably, orbit their experience. Gravity always pulls back to them.
Your inner world holds absolutely no weight.
If you share good news, say you just got a promotion, it lands badly. They either deflate it, subtly mock it, pivot immediately back to their own struggles, or meet it with a heavy, punishing silence.
And if you try to set a limit,
If you say, please don't speak to me in that tone, you don't just get pushback. You get massive backlash. You get disproportionate rage, playing the victim, and intense guilt tripping.
to understand why this feels so structurally different than a normal argument, we have to look at the psychological deficits inherent in cluster B personality disorders as defined in the DSM-5.
Which disorders fall under that?
This cluster includes antisocial, borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic personality disorders. While they all present differently behaviorally, they share profound commonalities at their core.
Dramatic, erratic, impulsive behaviors, right?
Yes, and fundamentally severe structural issues with emotional regulation and empathy.
But why do they behave this way? What is happening in their brain when they turn a simple conversation into a hostage situation?
The behavioral scientist Albert J. Bernstein uses a brilliant framework based on dual process theory to explain this. He differentiates between fast thinking and slow thinking.
Okay, take us through that. What is slow thinking?
Emotionally mature adults generally utilize slow thinking, which is governed by the prefrontal cortex. This is rational, deliberate, complex processing. Slow thinking recognizes nuance. It recognizes gray areas.
It's the ability to pause between a stimulus and a response.
Crucially, slow thinking is what allows you to recognize that other people have separate, valid inner lives and emotions that do not revolve around you.
But the emotional vampire doesn't do this,
The emotional vampire operates almost exclusively on fast thinking.
driven by the limbic system.
Driven by the limbic system, specifically the amygdala, fast thinking is instinctive, highly emotional, and binary. Everything is black or white. You are either with them or against them. You are perfect or you are garbage. It is constant survival mode.
Because individuals with these personality structures lack the internal psychological resources to self-soothe or to regulate their own fragile self-esteem, they face a terrifying dilemma.
If they feel bad, they cannot fix it internally.
So they have to outsource it.
They must outsource their emotional regulation to you. They use other people as functional tools to maintain their own psychological equilibrium.
They need narcissistic supply.
Yes. Supply.
Yeah.
They require external attention, validation, and most importantly, emotional responsiveness to shield themselves from their own underlying unbearable feelings of worthlessness.
And to get this supply, they engage in a behavior that Dr. Les Carter describes as data collection.
This is the part that gives me chills.
Explain data collection.
Because they lack natural, resonant empathy, they interact with you almost like a machine learning algorithm. During the love bombing phase or when things are calm, they listen to you. They log the things you share, your childhood vulnerabilities, your secrets, the things you are insecure about, your deep fears.
But they aren't logging this to connect with me.
No. They are not logging this data to understand you or to build intimacy. They are storing it in an armory.
That is terrifying.
And later, when they feel a loss of control, say you try to assert autonomy or you set a boundary or you just don't give them enough attention, one day they retrieve that exact data and weaponize it.
They hit the exact button they know will trigger your guilt, your shame, or your anger in order to force you back into reacting to them, which restores their sense of power and control.
It's emotional extortion. You said you felt abandoned by your father. Well, no wonder he left you. Look how selfish you are being right now.
Exactly. It is precise surgical cruelty designed to extract a reaction.
And this is often paired with something called magical thinking, right? I've experienced this where I try to explain objectively what happened, and it's like talking to a brick wall.
Magical thinking is the rigid, unyielding belief that their internal feelings dictate objective reality.
If they feel slighted by you, then you must have objectively intended to slight them, regardless of what the facts are. If they feel angry, you are objectively bad.
And when you add high impulsivity and substance use to the mix, which is highly prevalent across cluster B typologies, particularly alcohol use disorder, this fast-thinking, magical reality just becomes a runaway train.
Any concept of boundaries is completely eroded by the alcohol.
It creates a psychological environment where reasoning is literally impossible. You are trying to use slow-thinking logic on a brain that is trapped in fast-thinking survival mode.
Any attempt you make to offer objective facts is interpreted by their amygdala as an existential threat to their reality.
Okay, I have to stop us here. I need to push back and really wrestle with this. Because calling someone an emotional vampire or a predator, it sounds incredibly harsh. It sounds villainous.
It does.
If I'm the therapist friend listening to this, my empathy is screaming right now. Aren't these just deeply wounded people? Didn't they likely suffer severe, horrific trauma in their own childhoods to develop these defensive structures? Is it fair to call them vampires?
This is the existential wrestling match that keeps empathetic people trapped in these relationships for decades.
We want to believe the best in people.
We must grapple with the absolute truth of what you just said. Yes, they are deeply, profoundly wounded. The etiology, the origins of these disorders, almost always lie in severe early adversity, attachment trauma, or genetic predispositions colliding with neglect.
For example, Marsha Linehan, the brilliant psychologist who developed dialectical behavior therapy, famously described borderline personality disorder as being akin to living with third-degree emotional burns over 90% of the body.
That is a staggering visual.
She said that for a person with BPD, they lack emotional skin. Even the slightest relational breeze, a slight change in tone of voice, causes them agonizing, unbearable pain.
So they are suffering. They aren't evil villains twirling a mustache. They are in agony.
They are suffering intensely. But, and this is the most critical but of this entire deep dive, understanding their pain does not mean you are obligated to be their emotional human shield.
Let me sit with that.
Understanding the tragic etiology of a disorder does not require you to sacrifice your own psychological safety to accommodate it. You cannot heal a structural deficit in someone else's brain with your empathy. Your compassion, no matter how vast, no matter how pure, cannot rewire their personality structure.
I cannot love them into being healthy.
You cannot. And believing that if you just love them a little harder, if you're just a little more patient, if you explain it one more time, they will finally understand that is a symptom of the codependent enmeshed wiring we discussed earlier.
It is the arrogant, deeply sad belief that your attunement is a mandate to heal them.
Which brings us to the ultimate question of survival. If I cannot heal them, and if I cannot immediately escape them, because let's be real, a lot of advice out there is just go no contact.
But sometimes this is a co-parent you have a legal custody agreement with for the next 15 years.
Yes.
Or it's your boss and you need the health insurance. Or it's an elderly parent you cannot safely or ethically abandon.
If I can't heal them, and I can't leave them, how do I survive them without losing my mind?
When empathy becomes a liability, and when communication is actively weaponized against you, you have to adopt a radical, counterintuitive new strategy. You have to stop trying to connect, and you have to remove the emotional fuel from the interaction.
Enter the gray rock method.
The gray rock method is a behavioral and psychological strategy designed precisely for situations where you cannot walk away, but you absolutely must protect your peace.
Let's break down what this actually looks like in practice. Because the surface level requires a complete 180-degree behavioral shift for the therapist friend.
When you gray rock someone, you give short, flat, unemotional responses. Okay, sure, noted, I understand.
You stick strictly to logistics and facts. You offer no opinions. You share no internal feelings.
And crucially, this is the hardest part. You provide zero defense of your character when they attack you. You become as plain, uninteresting, and forgettable as a gray rock sitting on the ground.
Psychologically, this relies on a core behavioral science principle called extinction.
We established that individuals with narcissistic traits or cluster B pathology feed on your reactions. That is their narcissistic supply. Your anger, your tears, your desperate 10-paragraph texts attempting to explain your side of the story, all of it is supply.
It proves to them that they have power and control over your emotional state. It proves they exist and they matter.
It goes back to the emotional slot machine.
Right. If they pull the lever by sending a baiting, cruel text message, I see you're still being selfish with the kids, and the machine pays out the jackpot of my emotional breakdown where I call them crying and defending myself, they're going to keep pulling that lever forever.
Exactly. They get the payout. When you execute the gray rock method, you cut off the electricity to the slot machine. You stop paying out.
When their provocations are met repeatedly with a dull, flat non-reaction, I hear your frustration, I'll drop the kids off at 5, the behavior eventually undergoes extinction.
They realize pulling the lever takes energy, and they are getting zero dopamine in return. They lose interest in provoking you because you are no longer a viable source of emotional regulation for them. You become incredibly painfully boring to them.
But wait, I can hear the objection forming in the listener's mind. Because if I just give someone flat, one-word answers and refuse to engage emotionally, isn't that just stonewalling?
And isn't stonewalling one of the toxic relationship behaviors we are supposed to avoid? John Gottman calls it one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse for relationships.
That is a phenomenal question. And it is a crucial distinction that trips up a lot of empathetic people. The difference between stonewalling and gray rocking lies entirely in the intent.
Stonewalling is an offensive, manipulative tactic. It is used to punish someone. It is the silent treatment designed to make the other person anxious, desperate, and compliant. You stonewall someone to assert dominance.
Gray rocking is entirely defensive. It is not designed to punish, manipulate, or change the other person. It is an act of sheer self-preservation.
It is designed to protect your psychological safety when dealing with a nervous system that has proven to be inherently unsafe and predatory.
The intent changes everything. It's the difference between locking a door to keep a dangerous burglar out versus locking someone inside a room to punish them.
Exactly. It is boundary setting in its most austere form. Now, I must add a vital, life-saving caveat here.
Please do.
If you are dealing with someone who is physically abusive or who has a history of violent escalation, gray rocking must be used with extreme caution, ideally under the guidance of a domestic violence professional or a therapist.
Because the initial sudden withdrawal of emotional supply can sometimes trigger what is called an extinction burst, provoking a dangerous escalation in their behavior before they give up.
And you for adding that, because safety is paramount. But for the emotional vampires at the office, the toxic coworkers, the manipulative exes, gray rock is a shield.
Yet, I want to address the existential dread that empathetic people feel when they try this, because I've coached people through this, and they struggle.
They feel like they are killing a part of themselves. They say, I am a warm, loving person. If I act like a gray rock, I feel like I'm turning cold, dead, and cynical. I feel like they won.
That fear of losing your identity is profound. And that is exactly where we must introduce the ultimate existential reframe.
When you practice the gray rock method, you are not turning into a cold, dead rock. You are a geode.
I love this concept so much. Walk us through the geode.
Think about a geode in nature. On the outside, it is a rough, dull, completely unremarkable gray stone. You would walk right past it on a hiking trail and never give it a second thought. It blends into the dirt.
But if you break it open, inside it is lined with beautiful, vibrant, glittering sacred crystals.
When you use this method, you are not destroying the crystals. You're actively choosing to present that dull, uncrackable gray exterior to those who are manipulative, exploitative, or unsafe. You are doing this in order to fiercely protect the vibrant, sacred, empathetic core inside you.
You are saving the beautiful crystals for the people who have actually earned the right to experience them.
You aren't losing your empathy. You are putting a vault door on it.
You are finally recognizing that your inner world, your vulnerability, your deep capacity to care is sacred. And access to that sacred space is a profound privilege, not an automatic right for anyone who demands it.
Let's bring this entire journey together because we have traveled a massive psychological terrain today.
We started at the microscopic level, looking at the invisible transmission of mirror neurons and how our insula literally maps the stress of the people around us onto our own bodies.
We dug into the childhood origins of the therapist friend, tracing how emotional neglect and enmeshment create a nervous system wired for hypervigilant fawning, treating everyone else's emotions as a survival threat.
We mapped the agonizing, addictive chemical chaos of the anxious avoidant trap, where dopamine and cortisol masquerade as passion.
We've entered into the structural deficits of emotional vampires, understanding their absolute reliance on your reactions for their own psychological survival.
And finally, we forged the empowering protective armor of the gray rock and the geode.
If we synthesize all the neurobiology, the trauma responses, the attachment styles, what deeper truth does it reveal about human nature?
We are profoundly social creatures. We are biologically wired to need each other. Our nervous systems are literally designed to connect, to sync, and to resonate with one another. We cannot survive in total isolation.
But that very capacity for connection, that beautiful ability to resonate with another human being, is exactly what makes us so terribly vulnerable to depletion.
We are taught so often by society, by romantic comedies, by religious institutions, that boundaries are walls. We are taught that boundaries are harsh, that they are selfish, that they keep love out, that they are the antithesis of empathy.
But the deeper existential realization we must walk away with today is that boundaries are the very thing that make true love and true empathy possible.
If your boundaries are so porous that you constantly absorb the emotions, the traumas, and the chaotic fast thinking of everyone around you, you will eventually hollow out.
You will suffer compassion fatigue. You will lose your identity to the collective noise.
And if you have no separate self, you do not actually have a self to give to anyone. You're just a mirror reflecting back everyone else's pain.
By choosing to become a geode around toxic people, you aren't shutting out the world. You are finally creating a safe, sovereign space for your authentic self to exist.
You are consciously ending the invisible exchange where your energy is constantly drained. You are taking your nervous system off of chronic high alert and allowing your body to finally rest.
And that leaves us with a final thought to mull over as we end this deep dive.
We started this hour by picturing you walking into a room, feeling fine, and leaving 10 minutes later utterly exhausted, hijacked by someone else's emotional state.
But I want you to imagine a new scenario.
Imagine walking into that exact same room tomorrow, encountering that exact same difficult coworker or family member or ex. Imagine them throwing their chaotic energy at you, trying to pull the lever on the slot machine.
And imagine remaining entirely whole.
Imagine observing their chaos, feeling your mirror neurons try to fire, but using your slow thinking to say, that is their storm, not mine. Imagine their chaos washing over you like water off a stone. Unremarkable. Ineffective.
Because the ultimate truth of human relationships is this. Only when you belong entirely, securely, and fiercely to yourself can you truly safely belong to anyone else.